Hello, and welcome to the Adam Up Maths podcast. My name is Sam, and as always, I'm joined by my more talented, more attractive, and more beardy acquaintance, James Summerfield. Say hello, James.
Hello, James.
This podcast is about putting the fun in fundamental math skills. We'll discuss context, models, questions, and games that can be used in schools or at home, as well as sometimes going off topic. It's aimed at educators, but everyone is welcome to listen in. Most of what we discuss can be found on our ever-growing website, www.adamupmaths.com. Happy listening. Hello, Jimbo.
Hello. Welcome to episode number 3. And today we're going to talk about
place value, mostly whole number. Place value.
Now, certainly, we teach that in our school. We've got an all-age school for children with learning disabilities. Every single maths lesson, because it's something that they find really difficult to grasp, and it's something that without knowing about place value and understanding, visualizing it, it's very difficult to move on to other concepts. What would you say about that, Sam?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's the bedrock of number, really. I think without it, it does make lots of other stuff pretty tricky to move on to.
Okay, so normally what we do is we're on episode number 3.
We do it all the time.
Normally what we would do in the olden days is go on to a song about halfway through. But I think we should go straight into this one. So tell us a little bit about the song.
Oh, well, this song, yeah, place value. So I think this is a classic one where I tried to come up with a nice melody about how say 1,000 can be broken down into 10 hundreds, and 100 can be broken down into 10 tens. And yeah, as the usual process goes, I recorded my melody and sent it to you, and you completely ignored it and did something completely different, but with the same idea in mind. So
I've got to say, all of Sam's melodies, in fact, I will dig them out. They all go didum bum badum bum ba dee ba da ba badum beat ba bood bood ba bay. Yeah. And I've had enough of that, to be honest. So anyway, moving on, let's play the song. Are you ready? Yeah, let's go.
1,000 broken down into 10. Each part is 100 broken down into 10. Each part is 10 broken down into 10. Each part is 1 broken down into 10. Each part is a tenth broken down into 10. Each part is 100 faster. 1,000 broken down into 10. Each part is 100 broken down into 10. Each part is 10 broken down into 10. Each part is 1 broken down into 10. Each part is a tenth broken down into 10. Each part is 100 faster. 100.
Good. So tell us about what I like to call the mantra. What was the thing that we need to get stuck in a student's head? Why was that so important?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think place value is such a big concept. It's hard to narrow that down into a song of a couple of minutes. So the real focus on this particular song is the exchange. So if you have 1,000, then that can be broken down into 10 hundreds, which in itself is a good skill. It's also really helpful when you're getting on to doing written and mental addition and subtraction, and I suppose multiplication, division as well. So it's really about that exchange, and that becomes, I think, we're not going to talk about decimals so much today, but when you're getting into the tenths and the hundreds, that's also really useful to know about.
Adam up maths, put in the fan and fundamental.
Okay, so in terms of contextualizing place value, it's a lot easier from last week's podcast about square numbers. There are lots of contexts, aren't there? So where do we even begin?
As we talked about last week, two different types of contexts I want to talk about or discuss. So we have, and I thought I'd give these names. We've got the fantastical context, which is kind of like the Adam up world. Nothing to do with real life as such, but can be a fun way to introduce it. I'll start with that one. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Really ready.
Get into the zone. I'm ready. Get into the zone. Yeah. Okay. This is the first of two. You are walking. Adam and Millie are walking along the path to their next zone where they have to face all these problems. And there's this big, like a door or a gate or something. And in front of it stands this extraterrestrial being, monster of some sort, got their arms folded. He says,
I am the valuator.
That was I am the valuator. That's his name.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm just going to talk normally instead of his voice because it makes my throat quite sore. It says, if you can beat me, you may pass and enter through the gates and continue on your ways. And I go,
if you could beat me, you could continue with your ways down these paths.
That's good. That's very good. In fact, soundbite. Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
But they obviously say, well, they accept the challenge because they have no choice, but they don't know how to beat him. Now it depends where you're at, what sort of, how many places you want to be talking about here. But let's say you're working with hundreds. That's the topic you're doing with you're going to 3-digit numbers. And what happens is the evaluator has a random 3-digit number on his sort of visor, which goes across the eyes. Are you with me still? Like a visor, 3-digit, hundreds, tens, ones. And so let's say it was 352. Mm-hmm. Now, what you do as the class is that you roll a dice, problem with dice with place value is you really want it to go up to 9, and they're not as easy to get. You could do a random number generator or spinners, something like that. Anyway, a way to randomly generate a number 0 to 9. And you produce your first one. Let's say you get 4. And then the class or the individuals or whoever needs to decide whether to put that as a hundreds, tens, or ones. And then again, they repeat it. They get another one. Let's say they get a 1. They have to choose to put it in the hundreds, tens, or ones. Crucially, you can't change. So once you've locked in your number, you can't move it anywhere else. And then eventually they would have rolled 3 numbers, and hopefully they would have got a number bigger than the one the evaluator had on the visor. If they've got a bigger number, or a larger number, I should say, then they win. And it's worth bearing in mind, this is kind of the hook part still, where some of the students might not necessarily know a good strategy, and that's okay. They might not know how to win. They might end up just creating a random number and they say, oh, you've won. Well, oh, have I? Or, oh, you've lost. Oh, well, why?
Tell what might be really good. What you could do with this game is you could split them into 2 different groups, and you could say, okay, who's going to get the closest to that number on the evaluator's visor? Okay. So what you could do is, if you've got, I don't know, did you say 356 or something, whatever it was is on his visor. If you've got, if you pull out a 2, you're thinking, oh, and perhaps you've got like a hundreds box, a tens box and a ones box. Do I put that 2 in my hundreds box, the tens or the ones?
Yeah.
It's close to 3. It's not 3. So when they put it in, it becomes 200. if they put it in the hundreds box. But then they might pull out a 3. Oh no, I pulled out a 3 second time round, and I should have put that in a 100 box. But where am I going to put it next? So that now we're thinking about how close to the value can I get. So yeah, that's another idea. I'm a genius, aren't I?
You're absolutely incredible. Yeah.
See, I think it's better than your idea, because what was missing from your idea was the concept of the fact that 2 is no longer 2, depending on where the place value is.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, again, the purpose of this task. And at that stage, it really is a lot of, well, I don't know, however many, a certain number of students will really have no idea what's going on and won't know what that looks like visually or so on. And that's fine. It's really to give to give the whole class, hopefully, a reason to want to know more about it and to learn more about it.
Yeah. Which is another way of saying, yes, you're right. I am better. That my idea was much better.
You always know you are. The
thing is, though, you gave me the seed, didn't you? And I grew it
from wonderful seeds. Average things grow.
But in the fun and fundamental.
What should we call this game?
Well, I've actually got a name.
Go on.
But I'm welcome to suggestions to improve it.
Yeah.
It's just called Beat the Valuator.
Yeah. Not sure about beat. Too violent.
Oh, yeah. Is this a good time to mention? You know what we're talking about?
What?
Well, when we talked about in one of our other songs, when we mentioned it was number bonds to 10, wasn't it? And we said 3 and 7, 7 and 3, activate my weaponry.
Yeah.
And it didn't go down very well.
The context of that was that it was a spacecraft.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's Star Wars, Star Trek, you know, there are weapons. It's fictional. And there was someone who but wrote a brilliant song, but unfortunately, you know, there's reference to violence. It's such a shame. So
I don't think they wrote brilliant song at the start. I don't think it was preceded by brilliant song.
It was something complimentary.
Okay.
All right, song. It's just a shame that it's, you know, there's reference to violence. So I replied with, I think, am I right in saying that you're American? Because I think that we're going down a rabbit hole here, Sam.
Yeah.
It's okay to go down a rabbit, but I think there's a difference of opinion in terms of gun crime, isn't there? And the culture around weapons and things.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, she was American.
Not a mess, but in the fun and fundamental.
Okay.
Do you want the next sort of context?
Yes, the next context.
It's quite similar. I got fixated on doors, so it's about doors again, and it does start in a similar way. And this was sort of inspired by Labyrinth, the classic David Bowie.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
You remind me of the babe. What babe? The babe with the power. What power?
Power voodoo. Who do you do? Do what? Remind me of the babe.
We were talking about a David Bowie.
Yes.
David. Yes. Go on.
That's good. So,
Go on, Labyrinth.
Same start, walking down a path, but this time there are 3 doors. And one of those doors will take them to where they need to go on their journey. And the other 2 doors will send you to certain doom. Or something a bit lighter, like you just have to turn around. I don't know. But anyway, on these... Oh, go on.
I'll just say... in practice, how are you doing this? Are you going to have to install 3 doors in your classroom? How are you going to do this? Because I'm imagining that these are kind of starter games, aren't they? You're introducing the concept.
Oh yeah, that's purely what it is.
Or you're consolidating their understanding by these games. Because just watching your lessons, that's what we used to love doing for kind of 10, 15 minutes is the games. But because it became competitive, they were very quick to grasp and motivated to sort of grasp the concept. So how would you do this?
Well, at this time, it's really just an image on the wall. I mean, I'll probably I'll do some of my expert animation or drawings. Just probably there. But you could, I suppose, if you want to make it more three-dimensional, you could have 3 boxes, and then maybe inside one of them could be something nice, and the other 2
Boxes,
could be.
I wonder where you got that idea from. Anyway,
just
one for,
yeah, back on this. So on these boxes, on the picture, on the wall, the doors, however it wants to be set up, there will be 3 quantities. Now, this is when you're taking place value that extra bit further. So here's an example. And one of them would be 3 10s and 4 1s. That'd be written that way, using those words. The other would say 40 1s. And, well, I mean, actually, this is an example where we've gone into decimals. So 335 tenths. And you've got to go through the door, which, again, you can choose what your constraint wants to be, but maybe the one with the highest value. So again, at that stage, I imagine tenths haven't been taught. So it's probably going to be some might know, which is great, but for the majority, probably going to be a bit of a random guess. But again, that's the point of the context, the hook at the start. Now you've frozen. Oh, yeah. Okay.
No, I switched off. Had he finished?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like, I don't know, Scoob. Adam of maths. Putting fun in fundamental, Scoob.
Yeah, so in terms of functional context, which probably going to be for your older learners who are still kind of grasping this idea, it's going to be money. I think that's the one that probably will give the most reason for the students to want to learn it. You can do measures as well, I think. But comparing the item, let's say the same item you can get from 2 different shops, but they're at slightly different prices. And then you're going to say, well, which one is going to be cheaper than the other? And so on. Or you could compare supermarkets, tin of baked beans in one supermarket, tin of baked beans in another, and comparing those costs.
Okay.
You happy with that one?
Very happy.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's not really worth talking about how you would draw this, because a place value table is the go-to thing to do, isn't there? So, I suppose it depends what level they're at. So Numicon, I'm going to name drop that resource, is really good if you've got a hundreds, tens, ones column, and you could place the Numicon in the respective column, or they could write the number in there. So, but I don't think in terms of visuals, there's anything spectacularly different, is there?
Well, I'm not going to sort of do anything radically new, but there is quite an important point to make. If you're thinking about those lower 2-digit numbers, your 10 to 20, well, maybe 10 up to 50, then the way that you'd introduce those numbers visually or using materials, you have to put some thought into it. So first of all, you really want to the students need to be able to count or see the individual parts. So if you take 15, always a good thing I like to start with is using multi-link cubes. So you build a tower of 10, and that's your tower. And then you can put that on your place value chart in the tens column. And then you've got your individual five cubes to make the 15. And that's really important that those children can see the individual parts that make up 15. 10 individuals, 10, and then the extra 5. Then you'd move on to probably something like the base 10 equipment, which is those ones, the old classics, hundreds, tens, and ones, plastic made or wooden blocks and so on. That's slightly a step above, because if you take that stick of 10, the students can't break that up into ones. So it's just a little bit further on to use those. And then you're probably going to want to start looking at counters and place counters in the place value chart. So if you're, again, making 15, You put your 1 counter in the 10s and your 5 counters in the 1s. So I always sort of recommend you got your place value chart there as your structure to hold everything together, but the resources you use on the chart do take some careful thought.
Okay.
Just for people, just so that people know, it's almost 10 o'clock in the evening on a Friday for James Summerfield. And he's had a long working week, and either or it might just be me.
No, I'm looking at what I'm doing is I'm writing notes, thinking, "Oh yeah, I'd really like to talk about this, or I'd like to ask Sam about that." That's what I'm doing.
Mass, put in the fun, and fundamental.
Do you know what? I'm going to go off piece now because we have got a structure to this, but there are so many questions now that I've typed into my phone.
Ooh.
So it's not necessary questions; it's just discussion points, really. So first of all, I'm going to go straight into it: 10s versus 1s. So the language, because when I first started teacher training, it was units versus 1s. Okay, so I know that you prefer 1s, but I've argued with you. It wasn't much an argument because you went, yeah, I can see that. Over some lyrics.
That's how it normally goes.
Over some lyrics. You know, 1s for me is quite an abstract language because 1s is 1, and actually when you get to, let's say, the number 12, you could say that there's 1 10 and 2 1s, but you could also say there are 12 1s. That's why I think it's confusing. Okay. Debate.
I think one of the confusing things about units as the language is that we use that word in other parts of maths. So you're talking about in measure 5 meters. Don't forget your units. They include your units, which would be your unit of measure. So I think that's one thing that caused some confusion.
Yes.
I don't actually know.
So hang on. So if you were to look up unit in fact, I'm going to do that now. So I think unit means an isolated thing.
Yeah.
So if you think about like a storage unit, here we are, unit, an individual thing, or person regarded as a single or complete, but which can also form an individual component of a larger or more complex whole. So so an example is large areas of land made up of smaller units. But if we have to have this conversation and I have to look at the dictionary to find a definition of it, then for young people who are grasping language, it's quite abstract. So yeah, I think we can say it's safe to say that unit is not ideal.
I think the other thing is that certainly around England, with the curriculum for England there, and as in New Zealand as well, that is kind of the go-to language in the national curriculum. So you will find that most schools will be using that language. And what's always most important, in my opinion, is to have consistency. So within a school, definitely within a school, and even more so within a particular teacher's classroom, you want to be consistent with your language. And if you do then drop in units, then at least be very clear about what that means and what other words are used.
So in terms of like national average progression rate, kind of mainstream school, I think that's okay. If you're consistent, it's because it's the concept, and it's and it's encouraging pupils to use place value as much as possible in terms of mental arithmetic, and to understand it visually and pictorially and contextually. Then I don't think language is such a barrier. But I'm talking about students who aren't grasping the concept and have difficulty with understanding language. And I think you've just got to be so careful with it because it's so abstract. And we talked about Chinese numbers, didn't we, in one of the other podcasts, one of the other many podcasts we've done, and the fact that it makes more sense. You know, when you get to 10, it's 1 1 0 and 10 1, 10 2, 10 3, etc. Whereas our language is very abstract. So 11, where does that come from? 12, I suppose it sounds a bit like 2, but
yeah.
So what I suppose what I'm saying is, where you have students who have language difficulties, what do you think the best terminology is to use? So hundreds make sense, tens make sense, and
I'm going to stick with ones. I think that even when you get to 12 ones, it's the plural. It's one, and you've got 12 of them, 12 ones.
But I don't like that, Sam, because
you don't.
Let's just say you've got a table, right, of hundreds, tens, ones, yeah? With that table, you're doing a classic place value lesson. So you've got your unifix cubes out, and you can put your unifix cubes in the correct column, or you've got your numicon out, and you're doing a similar thing. When you get to the hundreds bit, you know, if you're writing 223, you could put 223 unifix cubes in the ones column. That's the difficulty.
But you could.
You could.
Oh, you want to rearrange it, but theoretically,
but I suppose what
thing.
it's not teaching is partitioning, is it?
Well, that is part of the whole understanding on place values, that you can write 223 as 223 ones. It can be made up that way, and it can be made up of 2 hundreds, 2 tens, and 3 ones, and it can be made up of 22 tens and 3 ones.
But the whole point of the table, and the whole point of, you know, if you're still going over this strategy with pupils who are saying key stage 1 or key stage 2, then clearly they aren't grasping the concept of place value. And actually, I'm big on encouraging students to use their mental strategies rather than written strategies, because when you go into things like the traditional column addition, where you carry the one, and I know there's lots of different ways you can do that now, and to take into account place value, but certainly when I did it, and you're carrying the one, and what you're doing is you're learning a process, but you're not understanding the process. And what I found difficult was I kind of got the process, but I didn't understand really what I was doing. Why am I putting a little 1 next to the 2? Why am I? It didn't make any sense. Yet a lot of the calculations I was doing, I could have done in my head had I've known or really thought about place value in a partitioning sense. And I think that's what we've really got to drive. And I think you've got to get the first bit right. You've got to get the representation bit right first, and the language first, in order to move forward. And I feel that the students who aren't moving forward, yes, partly because of the way, you know, their cognitive ability, but also you're jumping over the kind of concrete pictorial stage of it and the contextualized stage of it, and then going into abstract too quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think we could open up a big can of worms here on a big debate as to whether you teach how to do it first and then why it works, or do you teach why it works and lead into how to do it? So you're kind of saying that the latter there, you know, start with the conceptual way around it, and understanding the concept through models and pictures, and then sort of learn more the algorithm, and hopefully then you sort of see why it works. And that's kind of the way I've been.
Well, a lot of the students don't get onto the algorithm bit.
Yeah.
But the most important bit is understanding, because at the end of it, place value is about value as well, isn't it? So it's about, you know, when you are shopping, you've got a good, you can estimate how much your shop is going to be before you go. You can budget, you know, and that's what I think our students struggle with the most, because we skip over that and we go into the algorithm sort of methods too quickly. I would suggest, certainly in mainstream, where the national curriculum just races ahead.
I think the counter argument's quite interesting as well. That if I know it works differently for different children, but where you start with the algorithm and sort of almost get that process mechanically in your mind, even if you don't understand it, and then you look at how why it works afterwards. It's just a different take on it, and people have their own opinions.
Would you say that schemes of work out there, and this is really scathing, but would you say that teachers, if that's like a real focus of their lesson, is the analytical approach of actually this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it?
Yeah,
I would suggest that no. I think that students work at such a pace, and let's be fair. Most mainstream students, the national average, get it. You know, the national curriculum in across the world really is designed where there's a certain rate of progress and a certain rate of understanding, but there are many students and, you know, young people and adults who need that understanding of place value. And what really does, I was going to say annoy me, it doesn't really annoy me, but what does concern me is when you have, you know, a whole lesson on column addition or subtraction where you're adding 2-digit numbers with 2-digit numbers, and students could probably do it in their head just as quick or maybe a little bit slower. But that is, for me, that is the most important strategy, because they have to use place value.
Yeah, I think we definitely do. It's probably going to be a whole another podcast in itself about partitioning as a strategy for mental addition and subtraction. So we'll definitely come back onto this matter. For those people that are, you know, yearning for more, we will come back to this.
Well, I disagree with that, because partitioning is place value, isn't it?
Well, it's a part of place value.
Yeah, because if you split 12, right, then and you thought that that's a 1 and a 2, then you're doing face value, not place value, aren't you? So,
oh yeah.
Anyway,
Atomic mass, but it was fun. Fundamental.
We talk about some games.
yes, games.
So, I mean, the first one would be, if I was doing this, I would start with that Beat the Valuator game, or however it wants to be renamed. And then I'd come back to it once the teaching's been done and you hope that your class have gained some knowledge and place value. Then I would play the game again, and then but come up, as we sort of discussed earlier, some different ways that you can win the game, just ways to challenge those students more. So that's one game, and I have made some of those. They're not on the website yet, but I should put them up very soon.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Another one, which is on the website, is called Rolling for Dollars. Now, that does slightly alienate the our European audience. And I will just say at this point, Jimbo, that we've had some viewers to the website from Belgium and the Netherlands, as well as the UK contingent. But anyway, rolling for.
I get that information, right? And so far we've had viewers from New Zealand, and viewers from the United Kingdom. Both are males, aged from 35 to 42.
I'm not talking about the podcast.
I wonder who they
talking about the website.
Oh, the website. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the podcast.
I'm not sort of making up information. We've had global views.
Yeah.
It's taking off. But anyway, so what was I saying? Rolling for dollars. You can change it to rolling for pounds if you like, if you want to. But it's based on a game show where, again, you've got depends what you're doing. But let's take hundreds, tens, and ones. So there's a version for that one, and you've got a blank grid. And if you roll a one, so there are instructions for what happens when you roll a normal dice. If you roll a 1, you get to add 1 into the ones column. If you roll a 2, you add 10 in a 10, so you add 1 into the tens column. If you roll a 3, you get to add 100, so one counter if you like, or a dot in the hundreds column. For 4, 5, and 6 you have to end up removing them. Now there are some discussions there on what happens if you have to remove something if there's nothing there. So the game's quite flexible. If you want to go into more exchanging, or you could even talk about debt, if you owe money and so on, then you could take that further. But if you want to keep it simple, you could just say, well, just ignore removing anything unless something's in the column.
Okay.
So it's a battle between 2 players, and then at the end, you can choose. I mean, I've put here, you roll 10 times, and after 10 times, whoever's got the highest score wins the game.
Like it. Should we move on to another segment here?
Yeah, I'm kind of done with all the. We're on to any other business, I think, aren't we?
So no, we're not. Launch questions for this. So this would be pretty obvious because the words are 10 broken down into 1. Each part is
right. Yes, so that's an example of a launch question. A launch questions based on the song itself.
So the first line is say the last word.
Yeah, well, I kind of zoned out halfway through and I wasn't quite sure what you said. So anyway, here's an example of a launch question. We complete the line, 10 broken down into 10. Each part is ... So these questions are based on if you're working up to hundreds. Another one could be something like draw a picture to show 200. How many 10s are there? So there's a couple of the launch questions on there.
Give us an example of an autopilot question, Sam.
Oh, thank you, James. Autopilot questions, kind of the questions that you want the students to be able to answer quite quickly eventually, and it's about building that fluency. So a couple of examples here. 450 is ... hundreds and ... tens. Another one, 800s, 3 10s, and 4 1s can be written as, and then you're looking for the students to write that in terms of numerals.
Okay, that's good. An example of a hyperdrive question.
Okay, so a couple of these again. These are the more of the reasoning kind of questions that just take that thinking a bit further. So what's greater, 454 or 545? How do you know? Draw a picture to show. Oh, it rhymes. How do you know? Draw a picture to show. Another one. Well, I'll give you the last one, which is kind of the more challenging one. Millie says she is thinking of a 3-digit number where the tens digit is 2 more than the ones digit, and the hundreds digit is double the tens digit. Which numbers could she be thinking of?
If only I wasn't pulling faces and actually listened to that question, I might be able to answer that. But that's a very good hyperdrive question. www.animatemaths.com. Sam, we've got a question.
Really?
Yeah, from Sweden.
Wow. Amazing.
From Horace. And he says, when 1 million is written down, right, if you go from right to left and you put a comma in after every 3 zeros, then that's how it should be written. He simply puts, why? What's the reasoning behind that?
Do you know, actually? I didn't use commas when I was for larger numbers when I was teaching for a long time, and probably only been the last few years that I have. It just makes things easier, just easier to see.
So why
That's it.
can't
That's
you
all.
put, a comma for every 2 zeros from right to left rather than 3, for example?
I suppose you could, but this is one of these things where it's that world convention to do that. So we stick with what everyone else is doing.
Okay.
That could get confusing, but I definitely recommend if anyone doesn't put the commas in, I think it's actually really quite helpful just to sort of separate the thousands, so yeah, up to 1,000, up to 1,000,000. Yeah.
Okay.
But good old
Well,
Horace.
Thank you, Horace.
So what I thought we could do is maybe do this as a regular feature. I'm going to read a problem out, and then if anyone wants to have a go and put their answers in the comments below,
Yeah.
and then we can reveal if anyone got it correct on the following podcast.
Okay.
Now, I'll just say this problem is taken from a book called Can You Solve My Problems by Alex Bellos, which is a lovely book. Although I think he got this problem from somewhere else. But anyway, here we go. It's called Crossing the Bridge with a Little Help from My Friends. 4 people, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, are at one side of a gorge connected to the other by a rickety bridge that can only carry 2 people at a time. It is nighttime, and the structure is precarious. So whoever is crossing must use a torch. The group has a single torch, and the gorge is too wide for them to be able to throw it from one side to the other. So the torch must be walked back and forth over the bridge as the people cross. John can cross the bridge in 1 minute. Paul in 2 minutes. George 5 minutes. And Ringo in 10. If 2 people cross together, they walk at the speed of the slowest of the 2. So, for example, if George and Ringo walk together, they would go at Ringo's speed of taking, a time of taking 10 minutes.
Yeah.
How does the foursome get over in the quickest possible time? Or in other words, what is the quickest time that the 4 can get over there? Well, I'll just say one little thing on this before we close this section. Is there's an answer which is probably what a lot of people will go to first of all. All I'd say is, can we just think whether that really is the quickest way?
Okay. So how many people can cross a bridge at the same time?
2.
2.
I don't want you to try and work it out now because this could be quite tedious for our many millions of viewers.
Okay, so here we go.
Yeah.
So Lukey Does Stuff says, another incredible podcast episode. Neon Blast 22 says, here we go. The Rubik's Cube problem, 27 small cubes times 6 faces is 162 faces. Take away 9 mini faces on the whole cube times 6 faces. Oh, yeah. Times 6 faces is a whole cube is 81. So there would be 162, take away 81 faces hidden, or 81 hidden faces and 81 exposed faces. Well done.
Yeah, very good. Very, very impressive.
Luke Mon says, OMG, yes, baddie podcast. And he follows
I think that means I think that's a good thing. Is it?
Good. And then he follows up by saying, OMG, yes, that mind reading thing, I saw it on TikTok where they do that Denmark elephant thingy. And then
You mean Djibouti Ewok? Was that not
yes,
the one?
that's it. Neon Blast 22 says, good.
Can I just add a few comments from one of our the songs, which
Yes.
This is actually from the milligram, gram, kilogram ton, which we will talk about another time. So some comments, lovely, just straight up. That was from the Tharby Molloy, lovely. We've got three-eyed beast, says epic, which is nice. Swervy, 2 V's.
You know, epic means very long.
Swervy just says hi. Yeah. It's just as pleasant. And Miko or Meko, beautiful in capital letters, which is nice. It's not all positive though. Yeah. So we have Air Flakes, flakes with a Z. This will be in my nightmares. WTF is this lol? Okay, fair enough. Sinead Brophy. Yeah. Teacher puts on this in my class. My class while I'm not sleeping tonight.
Oh, right. Is that a positive comment, do you think, or
it could be?
That could be. I'm not sleeping tonight because it's so good. I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah. The Deutsch boys. Brew. Attotune. Just the last one would be the return of Keiki. I used to like it, but not anymore.
Don't forget to visit adamupmaths.com for completely free resources, tons of songs for every concept you could possibly think of, tons of worksheets and games and things like that. And it's all free because we don't know what we're doing. Bye! Say goodbye.
Well, yeah, see you everyone. Thank you.